It's not exactly a secret by this point that Adult Swim greenlights some incredibly experimental shows. I mean, just look online at the plethora of memes and video essays on Adult Swim, and you'll see an entire online community of people talking about just how edgy Adult Swim is. And of course, since it's the internet we're talking about, people naturally take this to the extreme, poking fun at the wacky and absurdist nature of the network and all of the shows that it entails. So surely a network such as Adult Swim would say yes to just about anything, no matter how outside of the box it is. Well, not quite. You see, from mid-2018 until 2021, Adult Swim ran development meetings via YouTube livestreams, which allowed creators from all backgrounds to pitch their ideas to Adult Swim for a chance to win a $500 prize and the opportunity to have your show potentially picked up by Adult Swim. And of course, with this incentive in mind, hundreds of people try to call into Adult Swim every week, leading to some truly weird and wonderful pitches. And a few of my personal favorites among these pitches are Eddie Murphy Bed and Shirai.
Who is the hero here? Who is the bad guy? And who is the beautiful girl?
But for 99% of people, including these entries, Adult Swim never gave any of these shows a pilot, apart from one. Skeleton, Landlord. And usually at this point in the video, I'd give you a nice little rundown on what the show's about. You know, what are the main plot points, what kind of conflict do the characters face, and do they find a way to resolve this conflict? But before I get into that, I want you to see just how wacky the show is for yourself.
What am I gonna name my band? For some inspiration, I'll look out the window.
Yes, it's very wacky. The show is centered around the shrill-voiced skeleton landlord and his handyman Mark, who together try to keep the peace within the apartment complex that they own. However, the skeleton landlord is both insecure and desperate for attention, so when Mark tells Skeleton that the tenants in apartment 6C haven't paid the rent for the past year, instead of, asking them to pay rent as a landlord should, Skeleton decides to start a band with Mark to show the tenants in apartment 6C just how cool he is. And if that sounds like a strange plotline, it only gets wackier and weirder from here. As Skeleton wants to be a young man once again, so he hits up his local apothecary and purchases an anti-aging serum, which he plans to drink midway through his set to make him sound younger. However, he ends up spilling the serum on the apartment 6C tenants, who now age rapidly, as the serum is only meant for old people and is essentially poison to the younger generations. So with the tenants in apartment 6C now old and decrepit, Skeleton shows his warped perspective on popularity and the treatment of others, as now that Skeleton doesn't view the apartment 6C tenants as young and popular, he tells Mark to dispose of their bodies in the trash, while simultaneously preaching to the viewer about how popularity isn't important.
As I get older, I realize, what's the point of being cool if it just means subscribing to some lame insular group's specific trends and opinions?
And that being young and hip is just a waste of time, revealing the hypocrisy in Skeleton's character. So, with the plotline explained, why didn't this show work? I mean, just by looking at the wacky visuals of the show alone, it could definitely have a roster spot on Adult Swim. And Skeleton Landlord could also have very easily joined the host of weird and wonderful Adult Swim shows that take on a whole life of their own, and in my view, Skeleton Landlord could easily have become a brand new subsection of absurdist humor. So why didn't it? Well, to explain that, we need to go back in time to the meeting in which Skeleton Landlord was first pitched on the 12th of July, 2019. You see, because this was live streamed on YouTube, you got both the opinion of Adult Swim and the live viewing audience, with the audience reaction usually being for the most part supportive or overall generally passive when it comes to giving feedback on a pitch. However, this all changed with Skeleton Landlord. Everyone in the chat had a strong opinion about the show, and whether they loved it or they hated it, they voiced their opinion. And even the team members of Adult Swim, who are usually very professional and quite reserved with their live reactions to a show, were both in fits of laughter and questioning what was even going on. And by the end of this meeting, the chat was divided into those who wanted to see the show greenlit and those who wanted to see the show thrown into the bin forever. And with this much of an extreme reaction, Adult Swim knew that they had to do something with the show, but they didn't quite feel confident enough to give the show its own series just yet, so Adult Swim bought the rights to the pilot of Skeleton Landlord for $10,000 and released it onto YouTube on the 6th of August 2020 so that Adult Swim could test the waters with a wider audience. And boy, were those waters tested. You see, just like in the pitch meeting, the comment section for this pilot were truly something to behold, acting as another form of entertainment on top of the pilot itself. And at this point, I feel like it's only appropriate to add my own view of the show, given how strongly people felt about Skeleton Landlord. And in my view, I really enjoy the show. I think that the terrible CGI that merges the computer-generated world with live-action people works incredibly well for the show and its aesthetic. And honestly, as much as I hate to say it, I actually grew quite fond of Skeleton and his shrill voice. I mean, the whole show just stuck out in such a captivating way, so much so that I'm thinking about a show that never even got made 3 years after the pilot episode. However, despite my own personal feelings towards the show, I can completely understand why some people didn't enjoy Skeleton Landlord. I mean, the skeleton's voice is indeed really annoying.
Hey, it's me, Mr. Skeleton.
Oh, come in, Mark. I was just rocking out with my boys, sweating it out and really busting a nut on stage.
The CGI is awful, and the dialogue and premise of the show really would need to be worked on if Adult Swim were going to seriously consider making Skeleton Landlord into a fully fledged show. But in the words of Confucius, it's better to have a diamond with a flaw than a pebble without. And in the modern world where every show has to be so perfect and clean, many pebbles are created in the process. But having said all of this, what chance does Skeleton Landlord even have of being made? Well, honestly, slim to none. You see, originally when the pilot was greenlit, there were many people calling for a full season to be made. However, as time went by, the show slowly faded into obscurity, with even the creators of the show seemingly completely moving on and continuing to make edgy content to this day, but now more set in reality. And presumably this is because the Skeleton Landlord pilot took over a year to make, and the creators Doug Blakner and Sam Wagstaff wanted to express their comedic ideas more than once a year, especially since there was no guarantee that their ideas would see the light of day. However, despite there not being much hope for this show ever being made, I wanted to make this video to showcase exactly why absurdist comedy of this nature needs to be kept alive. You see, I was in my tiny university room during COVID when I first watched Skeleton Landlord on a call with my close friend Emil, and we just couldn't stop laughing at how truly bizarre this show was. And although we both mostly made fun of the show when we first watched it, we slowly gained an appreciation for it, and it became a running joke for us during the latter part of 2020, a time in which any laugh was much appreciated given the dire state of the world at the time. And that time spent joking about Skeleton Landlord stuck with me, and I'd occasionally come back to this lone pilot episode and reflect on just how brilliantly absurd it is. And after being busy with our own respective lives for the past 12 months, I decided to get in contact with Emil, telling him all about the video that I'm making on Skeleton Landlord, and thankfully he replied straight away, and we got talking about Skeleton Landlord as well as our own lives once more. And I know it sounds quite trivial to put this in the video, but I think it's important to note just how profound a seemingly very abstract show can be. And in my view, reaching one person with something significant is far greater than reaching masses with something generic. So with all of this said, maybe we do never see anything more from Skeleton Landlord. Perhaps it truly has been lost to the annals of time, and will forever drift into the purgatory of absurdist humor. But if anything can be taken from this video, the world needs more creativity. In an age where regurgitating the same old content is the norm, comment sections are devoid of individual thought, and animated shows are more or less just copy and pastes. The world needs more Skeleton Landlords. Sure, they may not reach millions of people, but they'll truly make an impact on the people that they do reach. And with that brings an end to this video, and I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who continues to support the Harryfromends channel. I promise that uploads are coming more frequently in the future, so please consider subscribing to the Harryfromends channel and turning those bell notifications on. And as always, stay weird, stay wild, stay classy.